Stream, please. Angus Council.
Good afternoon, councillors. Welcome to this hybrid meeting of Angus Council. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I have agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. This is our first meeting since recess, so I'd like to remind members that when we get to questions and comments, I would like to try and keep these at one question and one comment. All members are now be aware that Donald McCaskill, Democratic Services Manager, retired on 31st of July 2023. Donald joined Angus Council as a committee officer in February 1998 and was appointed committee manager in July 1999. I want to recognise the insight and breadth of knowledge that Donald had for all that goes on in community services. Donald guided the service through many changes over the years and was the first committee manager in Scotland to clerk a full council meeting remotely online during the COVID pandemic, something that certainly presented a few challenges, but which Donald met with his usual poise and authority. On a personal note, Donald was my left-hand man while I convened scrutiny and audit, and then as Provost of Angus, and for that I am always grateful. I am speaking on behalf of all council, or I think you're wanting to say a few words as well? Yeah, hold on, I haven't finished. I just saw the hand coming up. Donald, we will miss you and we wish you a very long and happy retirement. Leader.
Thank you, Provost. And without drawing this out, I'm sure all members will echo your comments. Very heartfelt, and we appreciate the service that Donald gave all these years. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think that's right, but I do see other hands up as well. So, Councillor Wan.
Thank you, Provost. Just a very quick one, same as the leader there. I would just like to say on behalf of the opposition group, all the best to Donald and hope he enjoys his retirement. Thank you.
And Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Provost. I'd just like to echo your words. Certainly, he was a great help to me. He was probably my right-hand man during my 5 years as Provost. And his wit, his humour, and his whole helpful attitude will be sadly missed. I wish him a long and happy retirement.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Right, moving on. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Provost, there's apologies from Councillors Cowdy, Duff and Fairweather, and Councillors Gall, Proctor, Stewart and Wan have joined the meeting remotely, and all other members of the Council are present in the chamber.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? No, that's wonderful. We'll move on to number 3, minutes of council meeting. Now, minutes for approval 1A and B, are they approved? Thank you. And minutes C to L, are they noted? Thank you very much. We have one motion today. Motions in terms of Standing Order 25.1, Scottish Youth Parliament elections. Councillor Bell will speak on this motion. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Lloyd Neville. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Colleagues, the Scottish Youth Parliament, Parliamid Oigreen na Hallapa, was created on June the 30th, 1999. Using the constituencies of the brand new Scottish Parliament to elect young people aged between 14 and 25 to increase engagement, democracy and inclusion of young voices in this brand new sphere of government. It is not organised along party political lines. In the last term, I have been involved in amazing campaigns around personal safety on public transport, educational attainment and single-use vapes, something I've been tackling at Public Health Scotland and that this council addressed recently in a motion proposed by my colleagues, Councillors Devine and Cowdy. It is vital more than ever that young people in Scotland are actively engaged in and understand citizenship, democracy and engagement in these processes. We need youth voices to be heard and we need better diversity of representation. I'm really pleased that we have 3 candidates in Angus North and Mearns and 5 in Angus South. I have worked with both incumbent Angus South MSYPs and indeed Holly McIntosh co-hosted our International Women's Day event earlier in the year. Sadly, Holly is not standing again, but I wish her very well in the future. And the candidates are, for Angus North and Mearns, Hamish Fraser, Daniel Johnson and Leland Nestero. And in Angus South, Marcus Flucker, Reuben Whammond, Callum Stewart, Gareth Stubbs and Ella Quinn. I note that there is only one young woman standing, and I very much hope that regardless of who is elected, they do all they can to increase the diversity of candidates for the greater good in the future. Women are 51% of the population and only 12.5% of the candidates in this election. We need to do better and we need to do all protected characteristics. So if you're a parent, encourage your young people to vote in the November elections. If you're a young person aged between 14 and 25, please vote. Follow the campaigns and choose your best candidates. And if you're a candidate, congratulations on stepping up to stand for election. And know that this council commends you and wishes you well, not only in the election to the Scottish Youth Parliament, but for your future. And finally, thank you to all the council staff who are supporting this process. It's so important to work with our young people. So please, council, support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost, and it's great as the youngest member on this council to follow on this motion. Young people now and in the future will bear the brunt of the decisions that we make, that governments make and that international bodies make, whether it's climate change, the UK's decision to leave the EU, or the legacy of the awful economic conditions that we're all living through right now. It's really important for young people who have a real stake in decision making to have a real voice in it too. The Scottish Youth Parliament is one key vehicle for that voice to be expressed. And they've been at the forefront of so many important campaigns, from equal marriage to climate justice, mental health and the right to food. Over the coming weeks, young people across Angus will have the opportunity to choose their representatives for the Scottish Youth Parliament, and I commend all those who've put themselves forward. And I want now to turn to the people of Angus who are affected by this, the young people of Angus. Firstly, to the candidates. This might well be your first engagement with democracy, or it might be something that you've done before. Good luck to all of you, and I know that everyone in this chamber will look forward to seeing what you achieve together if you are elected. And to those candidates who are not elected this time, don't worry. There will be other opportunities, whether at the next Scottish Youth Parliament election, elections for local councils like ours, the Scottish Parliament, or for now, the UK Parliament too. Members may not know this, but when I was in high school, I stood for the Scottish Youth Parliament, and let's just say I was a wee bit more successful the second time I stood for election. But to the rest of the young people of Angus who will be voting, you will be choosing the people you want to stand up for your interests and your priorities. This is your chance to make your voice clearly and clearly. So debate well amongst yourselves, ask the big questions, but most importantly, take that energy at this election for the Scottish Youth Parliament and every opportunity in the future. Now, this may be a line that's been stolen by me from a fictional. It does hold true today, that decisions are made by those who show up. And with that, Provost, I wish all the candidates the very best of luck and ask Council to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of... Right, Councillor Proctor has his hand up for a question.
Sorry, Provost, actually, it was a comment, and I'll hang on and if there's no more questions. But if there are no questions, I'm happy to give a comment now.
Just go ahead with your comments, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you very much. I just like this endorse what's been said about the members of the Youth Parliament. I had a great privilege in the past 5 years of meeting our members on several occasions, and I was actually quite impressed by the knowledge and the street credit regarding the problems within our country and some of the answers they gave. They realised what was going on, and they had ideas of how to put things right. And for that, I applaud them. And I do hope that our future candidates and successful Youth Parliament members will continue in that vein. I do feel that they had a good grasp of the political situation, and they were quite apolitical in their answers and their manner. And I'm sure that will continue. So a good motion, and I support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Do we have any further comments from councillors? No. So is the motion agreed? Agreed. Wonderful. Thank you. Now, the next 4 items that have been considered... No. Oh, my apologies. Appointments. Yeah, sorry. Appointments number 5, Tayside Contracts Joint Committee. Councillor Stewart has intimated his resignation from Tayside Contracts Joint Committee with immediate effect. Accordingly, the Council is asked to fill this vacancy. At this point in time, oh, you've got your hand up already, Councillor Wan. Do you have a nomination?
I do, Councillor Fotheringham.
And do you have a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Stewart.
Right. It's fine. I think that's therefore agreed. Thank you. Yeah. Moving on, as I mentioned before, but I will just reiterate it, the next 4 items have been considered by scrutiny and audit, and I therefore request we only have questions or comments from members that were not on that committee. And with that in mind, we move on to number 6, Angus Child Protection Committee Annual Report. And I think is coming in remotely to introduce this report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, elected members, and thank you very much for this opportunity to present the annual report of 2021 to 2022, which highlights the work of the Child Protection Committee and our work to protect children in Angus. As has been said, it has already gone to scrutiny, so I aim to keep my report fairly short, and I'm happy to take questions at the end. So as well as the report covers the period as we continued to recover from COVID, and we began to see the emerging landscape of child protection against the cost of living crisis, as well as the isolation of COVID. And I can now give assurance that the multi-agency partners working within the child protection field were able to mitigate and respond appropriately to the risks that we identified at that time, and appropriate support was offered to children and families. In terms of the leadership of the Child Protection Committee, we continue to report regularly to the Chief Officers Group, where our work comes under scrutiny. At the Chief Officers Group, we share significant changes, developments and risks, and importantly provide assurance that review, development and improvement is in place through our multi-agency audits and reviews. I can also confirm that the Child Protection Committee has been well attended with all key agencies present, and our terms of reference follow the national guidance for Child Protection Committees, and I have no concerns. The key priorities that the Child Protection worked on during this year were further developing our safe and together approaches to domestic abuse, and this is reflected in the data, where you'll see there is an increase in domestic abuse concerns. We also developed our approaches to engaging children and young people and families by further embedding the PREPARE model, and that really supports a strength-based practice in child protection and planning, where children and families both feel that they have a much louder voice and a much stronger voice in relation to what happens to them. We extended our advocacy provision, and a huge piece of work which continues is actually making changes to our practice in line with the refresh of the National Guidance for Child Protection. And I'm pleased to say that we are on track to fully implement that. Lastly, data has proven to be a big feature of the year. We have developed a self-evaluation and continuous improvement group that has a remit to analyse and report on the key child protection data. And likewise, we take anything from there, and any exceptions or concerns we would report to the Chief Officers Group. So we continue to monitor the number of child protection concerns and the numbers that require follow-up, and where necessary, we dig deeper to understand the data. And an additional assurance actually is our early screening assurance group. And just to note that there is a high degree of confidence that wellbeing and child protection concerns that are reported to the local authority by Police Scotland are shared with other agents appropriately, and that there is good reporting of the incidents and issues and appropriate follow-up where this is required. The one thing I will draw your attention to is the figure 10, which shows the number of children on the Child Protection Register has increased. And just to assure you that the numbers are now continuing to fall, and that increase we expected after COVID. So just to finish, to give time for any questions, I'd like to assure all members that through the considerable efforts of the multi-agency partners within child protection and Angus, we have continued to strengthen our ethos and culture, and are really committed to reducing violence, abuse and exploitation towards children, and are recognising any changes within the workforce and in wider society as we do so, and make sure that our efforts are totally focused on review, improvement and development. And I'll take questions.
Thank you very much for that, Alison. Todd, do we have any further questions? That's fine. Do we have any comments? Right, we have Councillor Brays and then Councillor Whiteside. Councillor Clark, thank you. Right, Councillor Brays to start with.
Yes, thanks, Provost. All I wanted to do was to thank Alison Todd for her report and for all the work that she puts into chairing this very important committee. It must be really quite onerous, and a huge amount of responsibility goes with it. So I think on behalf of all members, thank you very much for what you do. Thanks.
Thank you, Provost, and Councillor Brays has taken the words out of my mouth, really. But it's hugely important, and to all members of the committee, we give thanks for this very important work. Thank you.
And Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Provost, and hello everybody, it's good to see you again. Alison, I have a background in children and families, and child protection is very dear to my heart, although it's the responsibility of everybody. Child protection, it's no trick question. Good report, and there's something that struck me is the appropriateness of the partnership, speaking about the sharing of information, the necessary sharing of information, because when I first started my career in that with young people, etc., that didn't happen just as a matter of routine. There were certain partners within that just felt reluctant to do it, and I was sent to many houses where I really shouldn't have been on my own. So I'm also pleased to see that the amount of bairns on the child protection list, the numbers are decreasing. Really pleased to see that. That doesn't happen by osmosis, that happens with good reporting and every one of us taking a responsibility for bairns and young people. So well done, and well done to your committee, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and my apologies, I should have addressed you as Deputy Provost. We have two recommendations, one to review the contents of the ACPC report, and two to note the Council's cross-departmental responsibilities in relation to child protection. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on to number 7, Angus Violence Against Women Partnership Annual Report, and I believe Ewan West is in remotely, the independent chair, and he'll provide an overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost and elected members. And just to introduce the 2021-22 Angus Violence Against Women Partnership Report. Like Alison, I'll keep my comments brief and happy to take any questions subsequently. Like the Child Protection Committee, the Violence Against Women Partnership Group is very well attended by all services that elected members would expect to be around the table to address the significant issue of gender-based violence. We have good attendance, good involvement, and I think the cross-service partnership working across all agencies has and continues to work very well across Angus. Prevention and education are key elements and a key focus for committee members to develop to try and reduce the numbers and also the impact of gender-based violence against women and girls across the county. We have the increasing aspect of online sexual exploitation and violence and threats associated with that, and that's a major task for us going forward to address that locally and be part of national efforts to try and reduce this pretty negative and nasty aspect of gender-based violence. Just to pick up on 1 or 2 points of some detail. The figures that you'll see there show an increase for the period of reporting, up 12%. Now, I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think coming out of COVID was one of those, and more reporting. I think we had probably a previous underreporting of domestic abuse cases across Angus. I think women and girls are more confident now to report domestic abuse incidents, and a stronger belief that they will be listened to, believed and supported. Service engagement with women and girls is now much stronger, as I already said, both for statutory agencies and support services. I think support is provided much quicker now and more effectively. Our staff training, which is mentioned in the report, is much more advanced now than it was previously, and staff are able to give people more support and encourage more referrals on behalf of victims. And I think there's a much greater public awareness of domestic abuse in general. The sort of good news on that is that, as reported at the most recent scrutiny audit group, Police Scotland indicated there was a drop-off in the increase. So we've got a decrease now. The most recent figures show a decrease in the number of domestic abuse incidents being reported. And I'd like to think that that's got the impact of that's being the result of some of the good work that's listed in the report around prevention, around training and development of staff, which is really key to give our staff the tools to impact on violence against women and girls. And the other thing we're having a close look at, and Alison also mentioned it, was our data. Historically, we've not had a great data set the work on to give us more information to help us identify priorities in the reporting year. In this report and subsequently, we're pulling that together much more effectively, and in the next report I hope to be able to provide you with a lot more specific detail on areas around violence against women and girls. Our partners, the work of our partners, Angus Women's Aid, Women's Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre, their work is reported upon in the report there, and they do a tremendous job in supporting and helping victims. And indeed, RASAC are about to open their first office in Angus next month in Forfar, which is another great step forward to support and help victims. Angus Council, through the Justice Services and other departments, housing, etc., are also making a very vital contribution, as is set out in the report, to this work. And in terms of prevention, we'll have, as we did have in the 21-22 period, our 16 days of action, and we'll have that again this year, where we're having a much more, I think, a greater number of events, culminating in a vigil in Arbroath on the last day of the 16 days, which I think is great. Our strengths and challenges are at the end of the report. We've got a number of great strengths there. We do have some challenges, as I've said, around online and commercial exploitation and the risk from online sources. And we need to continue working to prevent this type of abuse taking place. But I'm really pleased to say that we've got great partnerships, Police Scotland, Council Services, as I've mentioned, Women's Aid, RASAC, Victim Support. We're all working very hard together to address this really difficult and concerning violence against women and girls, which continues to be reported. And it's our great aim to get these figures down and take a real preventative and educational support to maintain that drop in cases. I'll leave it at that, Provost, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. West. Do we have any questions? Comments? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you again, Ewan. I've had my chance to interrogate the report at Scrutiny and Audit. I just want to thank you on behalf of Council for all the work that's gone into this, tackling this blight on society. And it's very clear from all the partnership themes that we have that the synergy that partnership brings is the way forward. It's certainly giving me a huge degree of confidence that by working so closely together, we can make inroads into these figures and develop and maintain a safer society in Angus and in Scotland, actually, for women and girls particularly, and by tackling and supporting men to recognise behaviours and change them. So thank you, and I look forward to contributing and working in 16 days of action as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. So you have the recommendations in front of you. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Number 8 is the Annual Chief Social Work Officer Report 2022 to 2023, and Catherine Lindsay will provide an overview. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, members, for the opportunity to introduce this Chief Social Work Officer annual report covering all aspects of social work and social care services delivered by and on behalf of Angus Council, and that includes those that are delivered within the Health and Social Care Partnership overseen through the Integration Joint Board. The report relates to the last financial year, and it gives a flavour of the wide range of activity that's being undertaken across social work and social care services. You'll see in the report that I've acknowledged the operational, financial, legislative and policy contexts, and I've highlighted that these do remain pressurised with rising demand and rising complexity evidenced across the majority of service areas. The reality of constrained budgets, given our public sector financial position, challenges around workforce availability and the ongoing pressure of significant policy and legal change across the sector. There are a few trends that I would just draw your attention to today. The positive outcome of the joint multi-agency adult protection inspection, which you will have had separate consideration of earlier this year, reflected a culture of strong and compassionate social work practice, of which I'm really proud. A continued and significant increase in adult protection referrals and an increase again in the number of families requiring children's social work intervention, as well as an increase in the number of children on the child protection register itself. Pressures impacting the availability of resources to support looked after children are also noted in the report and have been subject of separate consideration in other committees. There's high performance in our delayed discharge figures, and you'll see that from the report and from performance information relating to the Integration Joint Board. But this is alongside a continued and significant level of unmet need for home care in the community. There's also a continued demand evidenced in the report for specialist mental health officer services, which remain one of the Council's fundamental statutory duties. And that's a challenge across the lifespan. Once again, I'd like to take this opportunity to commend our workforce, both paid and unpaid carers, for their commitment and their dedication to supporting those who need it in our communities. And I'm really pleased to be joined here today by my colleague, John Cooper, who is a head of service within the Health and Social Care Partnership and has recently joined us in Angus. And between us, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have on the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Comments? Councillor Whiteside. Councillor Whiteside, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. And like the previous two reports, the report has been scrutinised already. I'd just like to commend Catherine and her team and express the confidence of members in your leadership in this area. So thank you.
So we have one recommendation in front of us. Is that agreed? So, number 9, Treasury Management Annual Report, and Ian Lorimer will provide an overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Good afternoon, members. This might be the quickest overview in history. The report has already been to Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and it was also the subject of a training that was provided a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really just, if there are any questions, then happy to answer those, but I wasn't planning to say anything more, Provost. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? No? Comments? Councillor Brays and Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Brays first.
Yes, thanks, Provost. Just to say that this is a hugely important area, Treasury Management, and it might not be everyone's cup of tea. Some people find it exceedingly dull. I don't. I find it quite interesting. But it's hugely important because there's an awful lot of money to be got out of this if it's done properly, and very pleased with the way Mr. Lorimer and his team handle it. Thanks.
Thanks, Provost, for the nod. Just wanted to point out that, as we've mentioned, these reports have been scrutinised already at a different committee, and that these are actually available on our YouTube channel to watch, so that if anybody does want to actually see the scrutiny of these reports, they can do so by going to Angus Council's live channel on YouTube.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor MacDonald. So, any further comments? No? Oh, my apologies, Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I just want to thank Mr. Lorimer for organising the training that we get. I've been doing this job for a long time, and I keep thinking by osmosis I'm going to really learn it. But you know, it is so good of you to take the time to do that, because it is, as Councillor Bray says, such an important area. We really do need to understand it well. Thank you.
Thank you. So you have the recommendations in front of you. Is that agreed? Moving on to number 10, the Council Plan Annual Performance Report, and the Chief Exec will provide an overview.
Thank you, Provost. Indeed, this is the annual performance report for 2022-23, and it's based upon our Angus Council plan, which we approved for 2022-23. The recommendations before you are to review and approve our annual performance report. As members will be aware, this year we saw the Council face its budget, the biggest budget financial challenges yet, and staff within this Council once again rose to those challenges and at times were under significant pressure but delivered for the people of Angus. This report reflects the priorities set out against the annual plan, and it identifies how the Council is delivering on our stated ambitions and our statutory performance measures. And just while it's topical, I have assurance that there is no RAAC within our school buildings. I know some members have been asking about that, and I've had that assurance from my team. Directors are here to answer any specific questions on any of the measures and the performance related to them, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Anyone got any questions? Councillor Devine? I saw his hands first. Anyone else? Anyone? Fine, one question. Councillor Devine.
Might be two. But they're very different, but they're actually on page 171 and 172. It's really good to see that 17 of our Ukrainian guests have registered for the Toward Employment Angus programmes. Happily, 6 were successful in obtaining employment. I was just wondering what the others are doing who aren't mentioned here. There are some who are have gone on to learning English as a second language, but I just wondered if you knew what had happened to the others. And the other one is about the CASI, and I understand, well, it says here that a new approach is being developed, and I think it would be good for all of us to hear what that means, because it is an exciting project in the under the Taste Cities deal, and I'm glad to see that it may well be moving forward now.
Through you, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Devine. In terms of the Ukrainian people, I don't have the specific information for that, and I'm looking around the room to see if anyone does. But given Alison Smith's going to be asked to answer the second question about the CASI, I think she could come forward and do both of them at once.
The final destinations of the others, but certainly I'll pick up with our new coordinator. Debbie Gowans is the new resettlement coordinator, and I can ask her to provide further information in terms of that one. With respect to the CASI project, we've been doing a bit of a review. We've been working really closely with our private sector partners on that project. As you know, TCT's projects don't happen very quickly, and given that this one also an element of that was looking at taking on a building and establishing a headquarters, etc. It's something we've been really quite keen to reassess the demand for that post-COVID. So we're currently in discussions with government around how we could perhaps reshape that project. We're still in that negotiation phase, so I can come back with the details once we've got actual proposal that we can share. But at this stage, we're hoping just to keep the money as it is. Obviously, we're not looking to hand back any of that ring-fenced amount, but it's just really about making sure the project is still meeting demand post-COVID.
Can I just add, Provost, as members will be aware from the agenda, we will have an opportunity to scrutinise this at the next Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and we can assure you we'll have the answers to these questions for you then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Speed.
Thank you. Yeah. On page 192 of the report, the number 9, in terms of number of access line inquiries, it was just in relation to the current 2022-23 figure and the target figure, and how that figure, the target figure, has been set, and how it will be achieved, but also just a query around, is that target really going to be able to ensure that we are able to meet the needs of people and provide access to services at a time that they need it, and we're looking to reduce it?
Thanks, Councillor Speed. Yeah, indeed, it's an ambitious target. I think it's an important target for us to try to manage, particularly as we're looking at different ways for the public to communicate with us, including making more information available online that folk can access before having to come specifically to us with questions. So we're keeping it under review. You'll see it's gone down already since last year. It would be our wish to reduce it to 1,500, and the work that we're putting in in order to do that suggests to me that it's probably still an ambitious target, but it's one that we want to hold to.
Well, I think I give a second question to Councillor Devine, so I can only give key to that, President.
Yeah, I just wondered if that target is realistic, and also does it take into consideration the needs of our population who do struggle to access alternative methods, particularly digital online support?
So I take your point fully. It's a target. I think what we try to do with the performance report is we set ourselves pretty challenging targets in order that we focus our resources and ensure that we can deliver as much as we can towards that target. Surely next year you will ask again, is this actually improving? Is it coming down? Which is what we want it to do. And it will be judged upon that, really. But for the moment, for this moment, we think that having a target such as that is a helpful target to us. And that's not to take away from ensuring that we have accessible services for people. I mean, this is specifically for access line inquiries.
Thank you. Last chance for questions. Councillor Proctor.
Comment, Provost, have you finished with questions?
You can start with the comments then, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to congratulate Mrs. Williamson for her leadership and for her team for bringing this very honest report in front of us. I think it's very, very difficult to manage an organisation, a council such as ours, and look after our people under very, very difficult and challenging times. We've had we've had COVID over the past couple of years, and we face annually stringent cuts that come from the Scottish Government. So I do feel that Mrs. Williamson and her team deserve some thanks on behalf of local elected members for doing the best job they can under very, very difficult circumstances. So for the report, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Proctor. Any further comments? Councillor Doran's put her hand up. Any other comments? Councillor Cheap. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind me raising this as a comment, and I've got some further questions that will be raised in Scrutiny and Audit Committee. But I just wanted to acknowledge, obviously, a staff have been under pressure. It's been incredibly difficult times. Looking at the indicators, I had a particular kind of worry about some of the school attendance rates as pressures on budgets continue. I can see that there is some levels of support within the text for that. That's something that I'd like to dig into a little bit more. And as families continue to be under pressure, making sure that we can offer all the support we can in Angus. So it was just to note that as a comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Doran. Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Yeah, it's a very full and interesting report because it gives a real broad umbrella view of how our council is being run and performance. Just a couple of things on the council indicators, page 192. That's just, I think, worthy of note. You know, it's good to see that still in 22-23 that, for example, council tax, the percent of council tax received was as high as 97.5%. It was really good to read that. On the other end of the scale, however, item 4 there on the rent arrears to be up as high as 11.6% is concerning. I know we had that provided also our housing update earlier this week, but I think it's worthy of note because it is a concern rising from 7-8% up to that amount this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheap. So, we have recommendation 1 in front of you just now. That's review and approve the 2021-22 Angus Council Plan Annual Performance Report. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on to number 11, Scrutiny and Audit Committee 2023 Annual Report, and Cathy Wiley will provide an overview. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This report is a report from the Scrutiny Committee to you as those charged with governance around the work that they've undertaken in the past year, and it just summarises the work and the conclusions that have been reached from the work that they've done in the past year. I'm not sure whether the convener of Scrutiny and Audit might want to add anything to that. I don't think there's anything I particularly need to draw attention to within this, unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? No, that's fine. No questions. Comments? Councillor Devine's first. Any other comments? Councillor Devine.
It's on page 206, where there are really positive comments about the way that the Scrutiny and Audit Committee works. I think that's reassuring, because we hear these are from the presenters, right, like the police and the fire and outside bodies. So I think that's really useful. It says it may be that shorter presentations would be useful, and I think we would agree to that, having had a very, very long, well, two-part meeting the last time. But in the final sentence there, it says, noted it would be helpful to have notice of questions in advance. However, I really don't think there is enough time for that, because we, on the Scrutiny and Audit Committee, don't get a great deal of time. So I think that would be not something that we could do.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Thank you very much, Provost. Yes, I totally agree with what Councillor Devine has said, and I had a very brief discussion with Mrs Williamson and Mrs Buchanan at the end of the last meeting, and it is the intention in the future to limit the presenters of the reports to the 10 minutes that they get at the Council, to shorten the meetings, because I think none of us are sharp after a 3-4 hour meeting. And I know at the last time, Provost, there was a lot of annual reports. We have to consider these, but it is being looked into to shorten the presentation time of the reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Fotheringham. Yes, you'd like to add in? Yep.
Yeah, just to add, Provost, I mean, I know the meeting, the last Scrutiny and Audit Committee was a long meeting, but this is the role of members, to scrutinise and challenge ourselves as officers and also other bodies like the police. So, you know, you're doing a really good job at that, and I think it's important that you recognise it.
Yes, I would agree with you. There is that balance. During this meeting, I always try and keep it to one question, one comment, but there is times where it does give everyone a chance, and sometimes you've got to work on that, and I'm sure Councillor Fotheringham's a very professional convener of committees, so I'm sure you'll take on board these things as well. Thank you.
Yes, Provost, thank you. And just like what you've said, it is a very difficult and complex committee, and I think I never ever limit. I should probably the amount of questions, because I think it's only fair that members get a chance for proper scrutiny. So there is a lot of flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fotheringham. So we have recommendations 1, 2 and 3 in front of you. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on to long-term financial planning framework. Ian Lorimer will provide an overview. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Provost. A bit more to say on this report than the Treasury report. Really pleased actually to bring this report forward. It's been on my to-do list actually for quite some time, and it was an action from our best value audit report, you might remember, from last year. So I'm really quite happy to have finally got it in front of members today. we do a lot of forward financial planning, as you're probably aware, but this is the first time we've ever produced a long-term financial planning framework. And it also includes the Council's first detailed financial resilience assessment as well. That's not something we've done previously either. It is quite a lengthy report, appreciate that. I think that's a reflection of the scale of the Council's operations and also, I guess, the many things which could impact on the Council financially over the 10-year period of the framework. We've not, within this framework, tried to project detailed numbers ahead. I just don't see that. That's pretty futile because there are just too many uncertainties, too many things that will influence our services and our finances over such a lengthy period. So what we've done instead is assess the position more broadly using a pestle analysis, and that's detailed in the report. So we're trying to identify what we think are the main big issues that we think might affect our services and our finances, and we'll use this framework then to inform the more detailed financial projections and work that we'll do over the coming years. I thought it might be helpful, just because it is quite a long report, to highlight a few things from the document. In section 2, which is on page 223 of the combined papers, just a reminder of the scale of the Council financially. We are, in turnover terms, over £500 million of a size of an organisation. We're responsible for managing assets over £1 billion. Those are big numbers. And we're managing all of that, obviously, on behalf of taxpayers. So the work that we do is really, really important. Page 226 gets into the financial resilience, section 4, page 226, gets into the financial resilience assessment. And although the categories in that assessment are things that we look at pretty much all the time, we've never before kind of brought that together into such a complete assessment. It is bespoke. Each council's different. It's got its own challenges and issues. So it is very much a bespoke assessment to Angus. And the conclusion of all of that is that we're pretty strong, actually, on our financial resilience across most of the categories, really with the exception of the expenditure category, where our assessment is that our resilience is weak in that particular area. And that is really because of the challenges that we face as a council around managing our expenditure, to change that in the face of difficult funding shortfalls. So there's legislation, there's government policy, there's demand-led services. All of those things make it difficult for us in terms of expenditure, as is set out in the report. Overall, despite that weak assessment around expenditure, our financial assessment I've concluded is adequate at the current time, which I suppose is still pretty good. I'm not going to go through all the pestle things one by one. Section 12, page 273 summarises all of the actions that we plan to take. Some of those are already underway. Some of those have still to be, or will now need to be taken forward. The framework also, as you would probably expect, looks at financial sustainability, something that has been very much on our radar for quite a long time. And we've covered it, Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and it's been one of the top things in terms of our risk register. What that part of the framework concludes is, and I'm kind of quoting here, is that fundamental change at a national level is required for Angus Council to be financially sustainable over the medium to long term. The Council can't solve the long-term financial sustainability challenges itself, even assuming council tax levels are increased and collaboration, new models of delivery. All of those will make a difference and can help, but we need help at a national level. The report says that fundamental change requires more money. It requires fewer or modified statutory responsibilities, more flexibility to change within the current statutory framework, or probably more realistically, a combination of all of those. And it goes on to talk about the sort of changes that are considered necessary to try and deliver all of that. Now, there are, as I said, at Scrutiny and Audit Committee, there are developments such as the Verity House Agreement, there's the local governance review, there's a number of things happening which are heading in the right direction. But there's still a lot of work to be done nationally, by government and locally by ourselves, to avoid the kind of type of crisis situation that we're seeing with some local authorities in England. Finally, section 14, which is on page 280 of the framework, summarises the key influence, really the big ticket items that we think will affect the Council's finances over the next 10 years or so. Things like climate change, things like the funding arrangements, partnership working, workforce issues, and digital services. Those are what we think will be the big ticket items. Of course, a report like this is probably be out of date within 6 months of being produced because the world moves very quickly. We have said within the report we'll keep it under review, we think on a 3 to 5 year basis, but if we need to review it more regularly than that, we will do. As I've said in the report, the framework doesn't commit the Council to any specific actions or introduce new policies. It's really intended as a strategic planning tool that we'll use to inform our more detailed medium-term planning and budget preparation. So appreciate it's a lot to absorb, Provost. Hopefully that summary's been useful, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Questions? Councillor Meakin.
Thank you very much.
I'm just going to see if there's any more questions to start with. Sorry, give me a minute. That's fine. One question. Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Provost. It's just to clarify, page 298 of the report, we see that the money available, the allocation for child poverty, welfare rights, social care discretionary fund, it is an amount of £150,000 and the spend is just below £18,000. Now, when I first looked at that, I thought
can you confirm the page number?
I apologise.
No worries. Sorry for you're in full flight. So, you want to?
It's the wrong item. It's the next item.
It's the next item. Right, you've got me confused now. Right.
No, my apologies.
So, questions on item number 12. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I'm looking at page 280 and climate change, and we know the investment in this is going to be huge, but there will be external funding that we would probably have to look for. Hopefully at a national level this is going to be available to us, but councils are not going to be able to do what we would want to do. It's going to be a national issue. It's going to be an international issue, indeed. I just wondered if you have any ideas of, of what kind of body there might be in Scotland to bring in investment to this area. But I just want to make a comment as well that I enjoyed the pest analysis. I thought that was really quite good. It made it much more interesting for me. Thank you. I think that was it.
Sorry, yeah, that's fine. Ian, sorry.
Yeah, I think
thanks.
Councillor Devine was asking about potential sources of funding. They're actually starting to come through, and we've obviously got our ears to the ground around those. There was something came into my inbox, I think earlier this week, around Coastal Change Adaptation Fund, I think it was called. So we very much have those on the radar, and I would agree that the council will need to invest in this itself, but it will also need to get lever in money from other sources, including government and possibly private sector sources, depending on the scale of the challenge and the type of project that we'd be looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer. Any further comments? Councillor Beattie.
Thanks, Provost. I'd just like to thank Mr Lorimer and his team for bringing this extremely important paper. It sets out in great detail our financial position in a stark but really accessible way. So I would congratulate him for that. And I would recommend that everyone has a good read of this, especially our communities and the people at large. It's clear from this paper that, and from previous budget strategy reports, that we've had to make huge savings over the last 10 years, and still more to come. Local government's changed enormously from when I started working in local government nearly 40 years ago. It's going to continue to change, and services that we've become used to can no longer be taken for granted. I would particularly like to draw attention to the fact that we have to find current and future savings from a little more than a third of our general revenue budget. But I'd also like to thank Mr Lorimer for providing some positivity by mentioning the discussions being carried out between local authorities and the Scottish Government with the Very House Agreement, the new fiscal framework and local government governance review. We hope to see some positive developments soon.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Beattie. Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Provost. I'd just like to endorse the comments that Councillor Beattie made there. Just also on page 242 of the report, you mentioned it. Ian mentioned there's the table on financial. Angus Council has scored 4 out of 6 as strong, so that's excellent. So what that tells me is our council is doing the very best to mitigate the situation we're in during this cost of living crisis under extreme pressures, and especially on the expenditure category. And I just want to read a little sentence from the report here. In short, the Council's financial resilience at the time of writing is acceptable, but without changes in funding and/or expenditure, that position will be eroded, potentially quite quickly. So on that, I just want to reach out to the Scottish Government, the Westminster Government, that we need additional funding. And the funding for the whole of this country comes from 10 Downing Street, and they need to look, and we don't want to end up like Birmingham City Council, so we really need some radicalism coming forward for the sake of the future of local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we have the recommendations A to E in front of you. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on to number 13, 2024-25 Budget Communication and Engagement Plan. So, Ian, you don't need to move. Just stay put. Thank you, Ian.
I thought there was another item in between that one and the next one. Thank you, Provost. Find the right. Yeah, in many ways, this report builds on the report we've just looked at and considered there. These are, as has been said, very challenging times for the council and indeed all public services. So it's probably, I think, arguably never been more important to communicate and engage with the public who rely on the council to explain what's going on, what the challenges are, and to discuss some of the options that are being considered. So the report sets out in the Appendix A, a strategy, a plan for how we propose to communicate and engage on the Council's budget over the next several months. That communication and engagement will be with the public, elected members, partners, council staff, etc., etc. So, as all stakeholders is the plan, and we do see that just being part of a wider engagement programme. So it's not just about the budget; it's about engagement across the council's activities as part of a programme. Now we're actually in a pretty good position, I would say, to take forward the plan. Members have already agreed a communication, engagement, and consultation policy last December, and we'll be following those principles in implementing the plan that's in this report. Our new Engage Angus website will be going live, I think, later this month, and we'll use that as a key tool in terms of this to support this work. There's a lot of training being done and communication within the council to kind of get us ready to start to use Engage Angus and the consultation policy that I mentioned. So, as I say, we think we're in a good position in terms of doing that. The plan that's in Appendix A is detailed in some respects, but we'll need to populate it a bit further as the budget process moves forward. And that's why the report is recommending that the Policy and Budget Strategy Group oversee the implementation of the plan, the further development of the plan, really as a natural part of that group's work. So that's the proposal. Again, happy to take any questions, Provost.
And do we have any questions? Councillor Speed. Councillor Speed.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just in terms of the engagement and the kind of hopeful various ways in which that will be done. Are you able to just clarify in terms of that engagement portal? whether that's an online portal or whether there will be kind of places within our communities that people can drop into to leave their comment or to view what it is that's being proposed.
Thank Provost. Yes, it is an online portal, but in line with the policy that was agreed, I think it was November, December time last year, there will be accessible options also looked at. That actually came up in the discussion of this item at Policy and Budget Strategy Group a couple of weeks ago. So we'll make sure, in line with that policy, that we're making other options available in terms of gathering and communicating, etc., etc. So that's part of the policy. So we'll do that. But we will be using an online portal as the main means of communication and engagement.
Quickly?
Very
Can we
quickly.
wait till comment? But
Very cool.
it was just to say, yeah, in terms of the quality impact assessment, it notes that there will be a positive impact for people with protected characteristics, and it's just to say it will only be positive if those people can indeed access alternative methods. Thank you.
Yes, just to say, Provost, I understand why we have to have the doors open to let the heat out in a day like this, but I'm finding it extremely distracting, all these doors banging down in the lobby. And could you please ensure that in future, if the doors have to be left open, that there's silence in the building? Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Mr. Lorimer, for this paper. Again, here, I think it's great to see something of such major importance as budget being the communication consultation being as far and wide as you're suggesting in here. My comment really is just a comment to all our elected members here and online, in that I'm delighted to see an extraordinary community council meeting being set for the 21st of September. I'd encourage all elected members to go back to their community councils and ensure that representation is at that meeting, because we know at our community councils we are continually asked about budgets, the make-up, how they come to pass, and there's been papers being addressed today showing how much of our budget is ring-fenced and can't be challenged, etc. So I think it'll be extremely useful, and encourage community council representation from each ward.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Durno.
Thanks, Provost. It was just on the public consultation. I'm glad to see this paper coming through. Definitely needed in Arbroath area, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of consultation goes on within in Arbroath. They just really don't want to engage that much. So I would really like to see for further spending to be more engaged in Arbroath, and for us to make a big effort to get local people involved, because they don't want to be spending money in Arbroath if people don't really want money spent on Arbroath. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we have recommendations A to C in front of us. Is that agreed? Moving on to number 14, Local Authority COVID-19 Economic Recovery Laser Fund, and Alison Smith will provide an overview.
Thank you. This report is an update on previous reports in terms of spend and delivery of a number of projects from the local authority funding that was received. I would bring to attention on page 301, there is a typo in terms of the available monies for town centres. It was an allocation of £10,000 per town, so that should be 20,000 and not 2,000 that is there. And also to say that following the preparation of this report, we have now received an application form from Carnoustie, which is being developed. We're just waiting on some final information from Forfar, and hopefully that would mean that 6 out of the 7 towns have accessed the funding.
Thank you very much for that. I think Councillor Meakin's got a question on this report.
Thank you, Provost. It appears that it wasn't one committee report, it was actually 2, so sorry for that. Yeah, it's on, again, page 298. The Child Poverty, Welfare Rights and Social Care Discretionary Fund. The allocation there is £150,000 with a spend of only about 18,000. Now, I just want to check that that is actually, in fact, a good news story. My understanding is that that fund is a fund of last resort. So what actually happens is that if people approach, for instance, welfare rights, they would check for any statutory entitlements they have, and only if they couldn't find anything would they then look at this fund. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So this is a sort of final route. There has been... We'll get it right one of the times. Apologies. Yes, that is right. So there has been some additional funding, non-recurring monies that were identified through Children, Family and Justice and the Health and Social Care Partnership as well. So that has been used first of all to support that. So obviously that's something that we're looking at in terms of funding and demand, and as we move through to see whether or not this is actually required. I don't know if Ian Lauren would like to add anything further to that, but I think that's kind of the position at the moment, is that we've been able to use alternative sources of funding. So I think when we bring back the next report, we'll be able to give a more up-to-date position in terms of the need for that fund and that allocation.
Does anyone else have any further questions? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, just a follow-up from that in terms of that funding. Could it be a case that know about it and that's why it's not been used?
Yes, that may be the case. I mean, when we're looking at, you know, and I appreciate as well there, we still have quite low spend against the public transport allocation, which is something we've discussed here previously. There has been more done to increase the referral routes to make sure that that awareness is out there. Obviously, we can continue to push that. If there's any other opportunities that we haven't identified and you may be aware of or other members may be aware of, we're more than happy to look at that. But certainly across those two areas in particular, we will continue to make sure that that is well advertised and people are aware of that.
Yeah, because I think it really is quite concerning given the crisis, the cost of living crisis, the fact that there are people, certainly within my constituency, that are screaming out for help, crying out because they're struggling to put food on the table or pay their bills. If they don't know about these supports, then, you know, that is a worry that we still have that figure sitting there.
My understanding was that this fund was from welfare rights referrals. So it would be the welfare rights referral. So it's not about people missing out and not knowing, but I might be wrong, but it's about, this is a pot that welfare rights would refer the people to if they've not got access to other funding. So it's making sure that the welfare rights referrals are made, which is an avenue that everyone should know about, and we invested in our budget, and this is from that money would be spent. Is that right?
Yes, that is my understanding. I think given we've just had the recent investment in terms of additional resources, I think there's a bit of work we need to do in terms of evaluation of where we are, particularly looking at what other sources of funding there. If people are tapping into other sources of funding, then we need to perhaps rethink that. I think it's quite early in terms of just having the new resource in place in welfare rights, but certainly we can do a bit more investigation on that and bring that into the next report.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Provost. I noticed that just with regards to the transport, as of yesterday, I had 64 people for bus passes. So I wonder if you could give me a rough idea as to how many bus passes that amount equates to, like how many people have received us. Sorry, I didn't see it.
Sorry, my machine's going very, very slow. It's just jumped. It is within the appendix where there's a breakdown in terms of the position to date. Sorry.
187.
Thank you. 187.
Thank you.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Provost. My question also relates to the bus passes. I believe that last time that we had a report or an update on this, we had the budget was £100,000 and we'd given out, I think it was 51 bus passes. Since that time, we've reduced that budget down to £50,000, and between then and now, we've only given out an additional 130 bus passes. So I'm wondering, is it worth continuing any longer with the bus passes, or maybe perhaps redirect some of that money perhaps into child poverty or some of the school initiatives and things that are within that as well? Because I think it's quite clear that over time has gone past, there's just no appetite for these bus passes at all, and the pickup for them has been so incredibly slow. Perhaps it might be worth using the money somewhere else where it might be more effectively used.
Yes, certainly. This is an interim report. I mean, we've done quite a bit more investment in terms of, again, increasing the referral routes, increasing the promotion around this, giving a little bit more time to bed in. We're certainly looking to bring back in the next report, which would look at these areas where there's the greatest underspend, and I think at that point we'd come forward with some recommendations. But I think this is, it's giving us an indication in terms of demand certainly at the moment, but we can certainly bring back more information and a few recommendations as to how that could be reallocated.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Could Mrs Smith tell us it's 300 and 301? It's regarding the town centre economic growth. Can she give us a bit more information on the independent retailer programme and also the consultant support, how that has helped the retailers? Just to expand a bit more on it, and also the town centre grants, what that has actually sort of been for in the towns, if that's possible, please.
Yes, happy to do that. So the first element of that was we engaged consultants. We were actually working with, it was a subset of Elevator, who are our Deliver Business Gateway. That was engaging with businesses in the town centre. It was doing an audit of skills needs, training needs, for example. So some of the areas that they would look at was where there might be a need to increase learning in relation to use of the internet, online sales, social media training, etc. So they worked with individual businesses to look at what their needs may be, and there was funding available to support them to access additional training or additional support. The follow-on from that was a development of trying to encourage business associations to come together across each town, and also to encourage businesses in each town to work together to look at areas that would in particular increase footfall across the town. It was challenging. A lot of the feedback we had from businesses was, that they're busy just trying to keep their business open at the moment, and that commitment is quite difficult in terms of setting up business associations, etc. So we shared information, regarding some of the things that have been done elsewhere. So some of the things that have come out, for example, in Arbroath, they're looking at web development, promotion of businesses, and some printed material that goes alongside that. Brechin are looking at street plans and town centre promotional materials, campaign work, which would be a sort of shop local type focus. I know in Forfar that's something that they're very keen on. Kirriemuir are looking at a business directory for the town. So it's these kind of initiatives which promote local businesses, encourage people to shop in their local town, and really get more businesses involved. Hopefully we can then move on to that, establishing business associations and helping them to access funding, to be able to promote their towns, to put on events, however they might want to take that forward.
Thank you very much for that. Comments? Oh, sorry. Councillor Stewart. You're muted, Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, I was asking about the town centre grant as well. Is that different from the independent retail programme and the consultant support? And also, I was interested to find out the feedback was that this has been successful.
Yes, so there was, in terms of the grant, that we offered up to £10,000 to each town. Majority came in under that, so we have everything between sort of 6,500 to 9,500 that has been applied for. So it was up to 10,000 for that town centre work that businesses agreed they wanted to do. The individual scheme, the independent retailer was working with independent businesses, so it was a one-to-one type approach. Not everybody needed that grant support. Some accessed funding. There was free funding available, free training available, for example, through Business Gateway. So it was a kind of compilation of that. But we are just pulling together an evaluation of all of that, and we can share that with you.
Okay, thanks.
Moving on to comments. Councillor Whiteside, I saw your hand up first. Doran. Deputy Provost. Councillor Meakin. Nobody at home. Right, Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Alison. It's good to see this report. I like to see the regular updates on the way the funding has been used, and this has obviously been supplied by the Scottish Government in recognition of the difficulties caused by the pandemic and during the recovery from the pandemic, and I'm sure every penny that's been spent has been appreciated, even in areas where there's an underspend at present. I think everybody, for example, who got a bus pass was particularly grateful for that. So thank you for the report and look forward to seeing future updates.
Thank you. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing some of the further evaluation of this. We see stats relating to the child poverty rate and the fuel poverty rate that was sitting around %, and we're going into another winter where there is less support available to people. And because the allocations of the other funds are kind of maxed out and have been spent, which shows the need, it just sits a little bit confusingly for me that there is £150,000 allocated to child poverty, which is sitting at a low spend at the minute. So addressing that would be good, along with the public transport as well. So looking forward to see further evaluation of this, and I'm sure that people do appreciate the help when they where they get it. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Deputy Provost.
Get my Sunday name, Provost. Thanks very much. Really, in respect to the report in general, Alison, very well done. Thank you. And when we speak about in 2.1, the report contributes to the following priorities. I'd just like to, the third bullet point there, the maximum of funding opportunities grants to the third sector. Now, it does concern me, coming briefly, that's one of these sectors. When we mention the third sector, people just think the voluntary sector, but it's no, it's charitable, it's voluntary, it's not-for-profit, and it's social enterprise. So when we speak about maximising the funding opportunities and the grants, 32 local authorities in Scotland and right throughout Britain are going to be using these areas to help people. So I'm really pleased that Angus is. That might sound twee, but it's important that I raise that. If I go down to page 300 and I look there, I've highlighted everything there, and the good thing that I'm seeing, I'm really chuffed to see it. Projects fully spent and complete. And just to finish, like my colleagues across there, I had misgivings about the bus pass. I had one family that I was supporting just quite closely. And the sad thing about that was that they couldn't stay in Scotland after a while, so they weren't able to keep their bus pass and other things that we were able to offer them. I'm not making a political statement at all. I just found that sad because they were really successful in lots of things, in particular that bus pass for all their family members.
Thank you. I think that's all the... Oh no, Councillor Meakin, my apologies. Councillor Meakin, right next.
Thank you, Provost. It's just the report overall I find very welcome. the majority of the money has been spent where it should have been spent. To come back on the transport provision, if we look at the report, there are 187 passes issued. However, the current average spend is around £2,500 a month. So, taking that into account, the money would be spent in 12 to 18 months, and it also tells us that demand is increasing. So, I think that 50,000, I mean, it's been said that we will get a further report on it, but I think the way it's going, although with a very slow start, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, and well done to Councillor Scott for getting 64 to join the scheme. Any further comments? No, so we have a recommendation to 3 in front of you all. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Right, corporate leadership team and directorate redesign. I think the Chief Executive will provide an overview. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Members will be aware that the previous Director of Strategic Policy, Transformation and Public Sector Reform has just retired. And like with all posts presently in the Council, we look very carefully at the role that that person played, and we consider, is this a post that we need to replace like for like? Is this a post that we can redesign and as such take some savings from? Or can we delete the post entirely? That affects everyone throughout the whole organisation and every post throughout the whole organisation. And as a corporate leadership team, we've been taking that approach quite seriously over the past little while because of the challenges we face financially. So having carried this out with a full consultation in all staff, and also considering that we already have a very small corporate leadership team, we felt that it was important for us also to be looking at reducing the size that we are, which is down now to 7 directors, 1 chief officer for Health and Social Care Partnership, and a deputy chief executive. As a consequence of this, it will give a saving of 84.5 towards the 2 million set against service design, and a further 47,000 will be offset against 5% efficiencies. What it does is it changes some of the reporting that takes place within in the corporate leadership team, and on page 308 you will see that after full consultation with staff, the Director of Legal will take on change. She already has aspects of governance. She'll take on all aspects of governance and change. The corporate leadership team itself will focus very much on public sector reform and change, as we've been doing, taking a bit of that. And then finally, comms. The comms manager will report directly to the chief executive, as do the service leader for internal audit and manager of risk, resilience and safety already, but they were forming part of a team under the previous director. So it changes some of the reporting arrangements, but through the consultation and through engagement with all members of the corporate leadership team, we feel that this is a directorate position, given our circumstances, that we should delete and work collectively to ensure strategic policy, transformation and public sector reform is all our responsibility. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Cheap. Councillor Devine. Councillor Bell. Right, we'll start with Councillor Cheap.
Thanks, Provost. And Margaret, just a bit of clarification. In regard to the posted Director of Strategic Policy in 4.1, the saving of 85,000, am I right in reading that as that's the saving remaining in this financial year from that post? The saving in like future year for 24-25 would be that 84.5 plus the 47. So, so 131,000 is saving in next year. Lovely, thank you very much.
Yeah, just to confirm with the mic on. Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, thanks, Provost. I'm just wondering if within a fairly short period of time we could actually get names attached to these positions so that we know who we're contacting. Thank you.
Councillor Devine, we'll update the organogram and we'll send it out to members.
And Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Well, first off, I'm actually really pleased to see the Manager Communications reporting directly to the Chief Executive as a former professional in that field. I think that's a really good reporting line. I am concerned about capacity for people involved in that, and I guess I'd just like some assurance that through appropriate and regular supervision, managers will check in to make sure that staff are coping with the additional responsibilities and workload. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. And again, you're looking throughout the whole organisation when we've done that, we have to look at resilience, and that includes people's personal resilience and support. We work very closely with trade unions, and our teams meet regularly around health and wellbeing aspects as well as their work portfolio. So I can give you the assurance that we'll continue to look at how that's managed. But I think one of the other things that we're doing as an organisation all the time is looking at what can we stop doing as we reduce our headcount.
Thank you. Any comments? Right, so we have recommendations 1 and 2 in front of us. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you all very much, and that ends the meeting. Thank you. Turn off the live stream.
If you stop.